Democracy depends on a free press. Please support our independent journalism at democracynow.org/give. Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Israel is intensifying its assault on Gaza as President Trump visits the Gulf region. At least 70 Palestinians, including many children, were killed earlier today when Israel struck 5 residential buildings in Jabalia City and its refugee camp. On Tuesday, Israeli warplanes dropped 9 bunker-buster bombs on the European hospital complex, killing at least 28 Palestinians and wounding dozens of others. Israeli officials claim the target of the attack was Mohammed Sinwar, a top Hamas leader. Hamas has denied claims it operates out of hospitals. Meanwhile, mourners gathered Tuesday in Khan Yunis for the funeral of the prominent Palestinian journalist Hassan Asliya, who was killed in a targeted strike earlier in the day while he was being treated at Nasser Hospital for wounds from a previous Israeli airstrike. He was the 215th media worker killed by Israel. This is the Palestinian photojournalist Samir al-Boushi.
This is a violation of the sanctity of journalism and of our rights. The vest and helmet we wear no longer protect us, unfortunately.
Doctors in Gaza are condemning Israel for targeting 2 medical facilities Tuesday. Dr. Ataf Al-Hut is the director of Nasser Hospital.
I
came to the hospital not knowing whether to mourn the martyrs, treat the patients and injured, or the staff who no longer feel safe. How can I protect in my capacity as the director of this place? We are speaking to a blind world that sees an amputated child, sees the limbs of children, and does nothing. I speak of women who were killed and exterminated. We speak of elderly people. What more is required of us now?
At the United Nations, the UN Emergency Relief Coordinator Tom Fletcher called on world leaders to, quote, prevent genocide, unquote, in Gaza. He slammed Israel's 10-week blockade, which has resulted in more than 500,000 Palestinians facing starvation in Gaza.
We have life-saving supplies ready now at the borders. We can save hundreds of thousands of survivors. We have rigorous mechanisms to ensure our aid gets to civilians and not to Hamas. But Israel denies us access, placing the objective of depopulating Gaza before the lives of civilians.
Fletcher also denounced a U.S.-backed Israeli plan to have private security contractors run aid operations in Gaza. Meanwhile, in London, the British High Court began hearing a case Tuesday accusing the British government of violating international humanitarian law by exporting F-35 fighter jet components to Israel. The case was brought by the legal groups Al-Haq and Global Legal Action Network. President Trump has arrived in Qatar after 2 days in Saudi Arabia. Earlier today, Trump met with Syria's new president, Ahmed al-Sharaa, the former al-Qaeda leader who helped topple the regime of Bashar al-Assad last December. During the meeting in Saudi Arabia, Trump urged al-Sharaa to normalize ties with Israel and join the Abraham Accords. Trump also asked the Syrian leader to deport Palestinians he described as, quote, terrorists. After the meeting, Trump said, quote, we're currently exploring normalizing relations with Syria's new government, unquote. The meeting took place hours after Trump pledged to lift U.S. sanctions on Syria in a major policy shift.
I will be ordering the cessation of sanctions against Syria in order to give them a chance at greatness.
Much of Trump's trip to Saudi Arabia focused on securing new investments for U.S. companies. On Tuesday, the U.S. and Saudi Arabia signed a new $142 billion arms deal in what the White House called, quote, the largest defense cooperation agreement in U.S. history. After visiting Qatar, Trump will head to the United Arab Emirates. We'll have more on this story after headlines. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says he'll travel to Turkey this week to seek a ceasefire deal with Russia. The Kremlin, meanwhile, says a Russian delegation will be in Istanbul for possible direct peace talks, so it's not clear whether President Vladimir Putin will personally attend, nor is it clear whether President Donald Trump will join the negotiations. Ahead of his trip to Turkey, Zelensky said he'll only believe Russia is serious about ending its invasion of Ukraine if Putin joins the face-to-face talks.
If Putin will not come, or if ceasefire will not be supported by Russians, by Putin, exactly by him. So it's been only one thing, that Russia is not ready for any kind of negotiation.
Meanwhile, Russia's continuing its deadly attacks on Ukraine. Kyiv says Russia used 100 drones in an overnight assault Monday, while on Tuesday, Russian bombs killed 3 civilians in Ukraine's Kharkiv region. On Capitol Hill, police arrested more than 24 people Tuesday as they protested Republican plans to gut Medicaid and other programs for the poor and working class to help cover the cost of $4.5 trillion in tax breaks for the rich. An emerging Republican budget proposal intends to cut social spending by $880 billion, largely by slashing Medicaid, which the Congressional Budget Office estimates would leave 8.6 million people without health care over the next decade. Protesters lined the halls outside a meeting of the House Energy and Commerce Committee Tuesday, while inside a demonstrator was led away by police after disrupting the hearing. House Republicans are seeking to grant the Trump administration the sweeping authority to target nonprofits that don't align with President Trump's agenda. A measure included in the House Ways and Means Committee's draft reconciliation bill would grant the Treasury Secretary the power to declare any nonprofit as a terrorist-supporting organization in order to strip it of its tax-exempt status. In a statement, the nonprofit Fight for the Future called the measure a 5-alarm fire for nonprofits nationwide, adding, quote, "This terribly thought-out legislation means that under the current administration, every environmental, racial justice, LGBTQ+, gender justice, immigration justice, and particularly any anti-genocide organization throughout the country may be on the chopping block," unquote. A federal judge in Pennsylvania has upheld President Trump's use of the Alien Enemies Act to deport Venezuelan immigrants without due process. U.S. District Judge Stephanie Lou Haynes' ruling is the first to support Trump's use of the 1798 wartime law, after judges in 3 other federal jurisdictions ruled Trump does not have the power to use the Alien Enemies Act to deport alleged gang members. Judge Haynes was nominated to the federal bench by Trump during his first term. On Monday, disgraced former Congressmember Matt Gaetz of Florida brought a television crew from the far-right One America News Network into the Saycat mega prison in El Salvador. Footage shows prisoners, some of whom were deported from the U.S. without due process, packed into crowded cells, shouting freedom and using hand gestures, calling for help. We'll have more on El Salvador, Saycat, and the Salvadoran president later in the broadcast. 20 U.S. states have sued the Trump administration after it threatened to withhold billions of dollars in federal funds unless states cooperate with Trump's mass deportation efforts. In a pair of lawsuits, the states argue Trump has exceeded his constitutional authority by dictating how federal funds should be spent when only Congress has that power. A federal jury in Wisconsin's indicted Milwaukee County Circuit Judge Hannah Dugan on charges of obstructing justice and concealing an individual from arrest. Federal prosecutors, including Attorney General Pam Bondi, have accused Judge Dugan of helping an undocumented immigrant leave her courtroom on April 18th to avoid arrest by agents waiting in the hallway. This month, more than 150 former state and federal judges signed an open letter condemning the arrest. They write, quote, "This attempt to intimidate the judiciary will fail. The American people understand that the Constitution of the United States has made the nation's judicial officers the guardians of the rule of law in our country, not the president," unquote. In New Jersey, Newark Mayor Ras Baraka returned to an immigration detention center Tuesday for the first time since his arrest by masked federal agents last Friday. Baraka is due in federal court on Thursday to face trespassing charges, where he's set to plead not guilty. He was arrested on Newark public property after he tried unsuccessfully to tour the 1,000-bed for-profit ICE jail with 3 Democratic Congress members, Bonnie Watson-Coleman, LaMonica McIver, and Rob Menendez. On Tuesday, Georgia Republican Congressmember Buddy Carter introduced a House resolution to strip the 3 Congress members of their committee assignments. This comes after the Department of Homeland Security threatened to arrest the lawmakers. On Tuesday, House Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries dismissed the idea that Trump would seek to prosecute members of Congress.
No one's intimidated by this dude. No one. And so there are clear lines that they just dare not cross.
To see our interview with Mayor Ras Baraka, go to democracynow.org. A federal judge has stripped New York City of control over its jails, citing years of violence and neglect at the notorious Rikers Island Correctional Facility. Federal Judge Laura Taylor Swain said in Tuesday's ruling she would appoint a remediation manager to address widespread abuses, including physical and sexual violence, severe psychological harm to prisoners, and medical neglect. At least 38 people have died at Rikers Island since Mayor Eric Adams took office in 2022. And Jose Mujica, the former president of Uruguay, has died at the age of 89. He was elected in 2010 and was often described as the world's poorest president for his adoption of a simple lifestyle and his critiques of capitalism. During the 70s and 80s, he was jailed and tortured for 14 years for his activity as a guerrilla fighting Uruguay's military dictatorship. This is Jose Mujica speaking in 2014.
Humanity has to consider some issues that are global, and the Central powerful countries are those that have the greater responsibility.
And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. Democracy Now! Is funded by viewers like you. Please give today at democracynow.org/give.